Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for watching this short 15-minute overview of the really important subject dealing with burnout. I'm just going to run to a slide to get us started. You can probably tell who's who from these pictures here. So my name is Mark, and thank you again for joining us. So my role is MD of Goodfoot Development, and Heartbase is an initiative within Goodfoot to look at the arena of well-being, resilience, etc. in these really tough times that we've got. I'm delighted to be working with John, and John will be introducing himself in a second as we run through the content. So to tell you and outline to you what the content is, just 3 arenas we're going to cover quite briefly, and give you a taster at the end of something we're going to actually do in the burnout arena to look after ourselves. What is burnout and how can we support it? 3 variables and 6 components, as you can see, and then some steps that we can go through. So a very simple agenda. And over to you, John. I'm going to just say hi, let you introduce yourself, and then we can come back to the slides. So over to you. You've experienced burnout yourself, so you have a story to tell.
I do have a story to tell, yeah, and that's how I got into what I'm doing now. I was in the legal space. I ended up being successful in my career, but experiencing burnout, and that resulted in me giving up my my practice at the time, and also giving up my career. I think the thing that stood out for me the most was that I'm a highly resilient person, very adaptable, can deal with high levels of stress. But what I wasn't aware of was when those stress levels were building up to an extent that they became unmanageable. I think what had happened to me is I'd lived with stress for so long that it became normal. And when it got to the stage that it started to become overwhelming, I wasn't aware, and then I burned out. And so for me, it was a real turning point, not only professionally, but in my personal life. And I decided to dedicate my life to helping other people in this situation.
So you're in the law space, so that's pretty intensive, and you were quite high up within law, and also running a couple of companies as well. So you've experienced the crescendo of achievement, but also then a massive, as you say, burnout process too. And there were certain things happening in that process, which I think you're going to take us through in terms of the components, what burnout actually is. Yes.
So there's 3 components of burnout, but if we just spend a second just explaining what burnout was for me and for the general population, characterized really by feelings of exhaustion, so mental and physical exhaustion. That's how you're going to recognize, am I starting to feel burned out? Well, yeah, I am. I'm starting to become absolutely knackered. Day and night, you just can't seem to shake off the tiredness. This is chronic fatigue. Can be physically, can be emotionally, can be both. Once we recognize, actually, I've got a problem, start to become really tired, then we start to look at the components of what is burnout. 3 things: feelings of depletion of energy exhaustion, we just talked about that. Increased distance and isolation from ourselves and from others, and reduced personal proficiency or efficacy, which looks at things like lacking in purpose. So if we just talk about this a little bit more, so these 3 elements will characterize themselves with somebody isolating themselves, wanting to stay at home, not wanting to see people. They will lose direction in their life. What's the point of going to my job? What's the point in doing this, that, and the other? They'll be very tired and very distressed, so probably will spend a long time in bed. And that was me. That was my situation.
And these are characterized for me with a sense of perhaps of detachment, isn't it? Removing yourself from something which is a pressure because you're physically, mentally, emotionally tired. And then therefore the distancing comes from people that you care about, from your job, from yourself in essence. And then we end up less effective professionally, less impact.
And I think also the situation that the world's facing with COVID-19 is that we are becoming more socially isolated. So we're getting feelings of detachment already. Myself and Mark were talking today about how actually we're starting to feel tired. Chronic stress builds up over time and we don't recognize it. That's the problem. You'll suddenly get a moment where you go, you know what, I'm absolutely exhausted. I can't shake this tiredness. have become detached, have become isolated. And that's the problem with what we're facing at the moment in the world, is that people are becoming isolated and detached. They increased levels of stress because they're working at home, and you can't get away from working at home, because the office is now your environment in your home. And so what we're faced with is a situation where people are going to be more burned out, more stressed, and all the evidence, I mean, looking at studies from Gallup, are saying that burnout is on the rise, it's massively increasing, and it's absolutely no surprise to me. But the one telltale sign is, and to repeat it again, are you feeling overly tired? Suddenly, are you just noticing, I've just lost that zip? It may seem like nothing, quite innocuous, but actually this could be the first telltale signs of stress at burnout.
I was intrigued by the effects, the telephone box story that you told me, John, which I think you're gonna move us into here, because there are some effects of burnout which not just on ourselves, right?
That's right. I mean, why are we doing this piece of work with you today? Well, it's to help at the workplace. And telephone box experiment by Ison and Levin is a really interesting one, because the researchers put a coin in the telephone box and asked participants to go in and make a telephone call. The people who found the coin were happy. I mean, it's not surprising. Find some money, it makes you smile. And the people who didn't find the coin, I'm sure they weren't depressed, but they weren't as happy. But the researchers were really looking at the effects of what happened when they left their telephone box, because there was a lady outside asking for help. And the people who had the coin, far more likely, I mean, well over 70% more likely to help that lady. Mm. And the people who didn't find the coin were far less likely. I think we were looking at an increased level of 90% to 20%, something like this. And how does that relate to the workplace? Well, massively, because if we're more stressed, more burned out, we're not going to be feeling as good. And if we're not feeling as good, we're less likely to help people. We're less likely to want to interact with our colleagues.
Sure. And I'll move on to the next slide and just quickly outline this, because this was fascinating too. It was a study within the NHS of doctors and the mistakes that were made in the medical profession, which is exactly the same story, John, right? The people disconnect, they experience irritation, those irritations lead to mistakes. So the point about burnout is that it doesn't just affect us, it does affect those that we are working with as well, and those of our colleagues in our teams, whether we're in the medical profession or whether we're in commerce or within corporates or within charities. There's the same effect. So you mentioned, or we mentioned in the agenda, John, there were some components of burnout, which is good to get familiar with for a couple of minutes before we move on to something practical to do. So let me move on to these for you to explain to us.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. So 3 variables that we're looking at are mindfulness, cardiovascular exercise, and yoga. Now, my research suggests that mindfulness is very good with working with cognition, the prefrontal cortex, front of our heads, helps us with our thinking. Thinking helps, or helping with thinking helps calm down the mind. Yoga is helping with that physical exhaustion, to release physical stress. The interaction of mindfulness and yoga, some really interesting studies show that they're very interactive, they support each other, and they increase the effects of each other. So doing mindfulness increases the effect of yoga, doing yoga increases the mindfulness effect. The research I'm particularly interested in is how cardiovascular work then impacts mindfulness and yoga. So effectively raising energy levels. So cardiovascular element is about raising our energy levels, getting that zest for life back that we lose in burnout. And then if we look at the 6 steps then or 6 components of these variables, these are like a practical program that we can put in place in the workplace or in our personal lives to help us if we're highly stressed or we are burned out. So just a quick word or two on each point. So positivity is a mindset thing. The more positive we are, the happier we are, the more better our energy is. Mindsets, we're looking at improving the way we think, not getting overly thinking. Control, looking at the control element of our thoughts, not allowing ourselves to get drawn into rumination. Energy levels, we talked about that, raising our energy levels, feeling physically better, more zest for life. Community, Highly important that you've got a supportive community at work and in your personal life. And compassion. Now, compassion, we're going to do an exercise around emotions. But compassion is really important if you're burnt out to spend some time working on kindness for yourself. Because through kindness for ourselves, we will start to feel better. We'll become more empathetic towards ourselves and towards others. And that will help us come out of burnout.
And it's interesting that the bottom one there is community, isn't it? It's attachment to others, working with people rather than detachment, which is what the burnout is pushing us to do.
That's right.
Rather than being brave and handling it all on our own, actually getting people around us who are aware of what we're dealing with is important. So that slide is indicating personal practice to prevent and treat for ourselves, a personal approach for us to think of. And John, you were, in the last few moments, you're going to take us through these 6 arenas about how we can actually start with a practical exercise for us to have a go at.
Yeah, so a known exercise that's good to help with burnout is a thing called emotional management, sometimes referred to as emotional agility. So let's all do this together then. So you can look at the screen, you can take note of these 6 elements, but let's do this practically now so you get a feel for it. So just take a pause for me. Simply stop. Relax. Stop what you're doing. Certainly look away from the computer. Don't have to close your eyes. I always feel like I want to, but you don't have to. But let's spend these next 10 seconds not doing anything, not looking at anything, just relaxing. Okay, so we start to recognize how you're thinking, how you're feeling. So part of getting unhooked here is just noticing how we're feeling today. How are you feeling particularly stressed? Are you feeling particularly anxious? Maybe you're not, maybe you're feeling really great. You know, what's your thinking? You're thinking, oh, I've got a meeting in a few minutes, da, 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 da. Or you're not thinking about much. You just want to then recognize what's going on. You know, is your thoughts, is the way you're feeling making you act a certain way? You might be thinking about something and it might be making your heart rate increase. Or you might have a painful back and that's making your mind a little bit more negative. Just start to recognize the patterns that are going on. Label your thoughts and emotions. Oh, I'm having a thought of negativity or stress. I'm having a feeling of pain. Through labeling, we help to accept things and it reduces our stress even further. We start to unhook even more. Be kind to yourself. Tell yourself it's okay, even if you feel bad, stressed, not good. Then act on that compassion. Be kind to yourself moving out of this exercise. Recognize that it's okay. You're a good person. We all feel bad. If you do this exercise at least once a day, can only be for a couple of minutes, a minute or two, have a dramatic effect on your stress and burnout.
And there's been some studies, just to close on this, there's some studies of companies that have done that, John. They've just taken deliberate pauses in the day, and it's affected relationships and productivity in the way that you've explained.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, and we draw to a close now. So if anything we can do to help, there's some contact details there. If you'd like to talk to John and have a chat, some thoughts and ideas, there's John's email. Do contact John and have some discussions. We do run resilience masterclasses regularly, so do get in touch with us if that's something you wish to chat about. And above all, from John and I, do consider your own personal approach, your own personal way of dealing and awareness of the situations that we're all in and that others are in, so that we can prevent moving down the burnout road, which is something we definitely want to avoid. Thank you so much, John, and we'll draw to a close there.